It may well be something we should have been doing already, but some questions came up at the end of everything after all was said and done for the first edition Pathfinder Druid, so let's go ahead and do a little Q&A. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. I'm sure you've noticed that I'm not in my usual sitting position. In fact, I am using a chair today. Nothing really major, just, solid week of chopping firewood, hauling kids around, and trying to get back into exercising and keeping myself in shape and working off that, all that holiday food and leftovers and whatnot. It's just, I needed to give myself just a little bit of a break, so hope you'll forgive me for that. But today we are going to do a little bit of a Q&A in regards to the Pathfinder Druid, with everything that I've covered so far. And like I said in the intro, maybe this is something I should have been doing with all of the classes I've covered so far, but c'est la vie, here we are. So we are going to go ahead and get started answering a couple of quick questions. There was one that had come in under a separate point in regards to how to advance and level up animal companions and the like, and because the Druid is not the only one with access to animal companions, I'm going to do that as its own separate video. There's enough there to discuss and talk about, so it will be its own thing, but it will eventually be added to the playlist for this particular class and build, so that will be coming. But there were other questions that did need to be answered, and things that just needed to be, better extrapolated on and better explained and the like. So we'll get into that, but before we do, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. But now we'll go ahead and answer things here, and one of the first things to come up was something pointed out, goodness, not unfairly, about the Druid's adaptability in regards to that aha gotcha moment that I threw out there that DMs might pull, where they describe the setting and situation to you, and maybe that's the case for one or two sessions, and all of a sudden, bam, everything's been radically changed and the party's all thrown off, you're not prepared for it, and depending on the story and the DM, that can be kind of a jerk move. It could be just kind of a quick little fun thing that they decided to throw at you, throw you for a curve and watch you players adapt. But a thing to note is, with the Druid especially, although this is a bit applicable to most divine casters, you know every spell on your spell list that you're able to access and cast. So day to day, you can swap out what you need in order to adapt to whatever situation you're in. So you only need to last for one day in order to readily adjust to whatever has been thrown at you. This goes for clerics, this goes for druids, on and on and on. War priests as well. So these classes will generally be ready for most everything. You're not going to be overwhelmingly hampered or inhibited by this sudden change in setting and location, anything like that. And druids especially are going to be readily adaptable to this, because you still have your wild shape, you still have access to your knowledge nature skill, which is going to feed into wild shape, and if your whatever combat forms you've selected are somehow not ideal for what you have around you in your environment, you can easily swap over to something else that's more appropriate, although in many instances I would say that would be more thematic and environmentally fitting than anything else. So that's just something to bear in mind there. I had alluded to it somewhat by talking about the flexibility in wild shape, but then I went off on that tangent and almost immediately kind of erased the previous point from focus. So even if you're in a situation where there's been a little bit of a haha gotcha kind of thrown at you and the rest of the party, last one day and you will be fine. You'll be able to swap your spells around and you'll be okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another question that had come up was in regard to the Druid's extracts option, the Druidic herbalism, which functions more or less like the alchemist class ability, creating their different potions and their concoctions and those extracts that they're able to produce for their abilities, for what they're able to bring to the table. And that was an interesting one. It doesn't pertain to this particular build, but I think it's big enough to be worth going over here. So when it comes to this is what you take at first level, and this replaces your animal companion or domain options. This is what your nature bond becomes, and this allows you to take different kinds of mosses, plants, herbs, berries, and the like, and mix them together to create concoctions that replicate the effects of spells that you have access to, from your 0 level to 3rd level to start off with. And you're able to make a number of these equal to your wisdom modifier per day for free. Anything beyond that wisdom modifier, you begin having to pay for, as if you were making a potion using the brew potion feat. So it's not that you're necessarily limited, you're just limited on when you're going to actually start expending financial resources. So depending on the party and situation and how early you are into the game, that can be a bit of a limiter for you and prevent you from abusing it quite as bad as you potentially could. However, as you level in advance, this ability is going to expand at 4th level and 7th level. So by the time you hit 4th level, your skill in this herbalism increases, so you're able to disguise the effects of the concoctions, making it more difficult for anybody that might acquire them from you from identifying what those effects are if you don't want them to know. It adds an increased difficulty to the perception or spellcraft checks needed. I believe at 4th level it's a 5, and that bumps up by by a total of 10 when you hit 7th level. Not only that, but when you're making your extra concoctions beyond your wisdom modifier, you only have to pay half of the normal cost to make them, and it's only going to take half the normal time to create them. And you can create concoctions of spells from any list as long as you're able to cast the spell. So that definitely can open up and really expand your options in regard to this, and gets to be very, very interesting at that point. Although, again, by 4th level, chances are you're not necessarily going to have a lot of extra funds and resources necessary to create a lot of extra concoctions, although the half cost and half time does make it much, much more readily easy and available for you to do so. And then by the time you hit 7th level, aside from increasing the difficulty of others identifying what your concoctions are, you can create any herbal concoction within 1 minute, drastically reducing the amount of time. And not only that, but you can also create any special concoction of any spell higher than 3rd level that you can cast, but when you do this, you have to expend a spell slot of the same level. Those special concoctions don't cost you anything to create in that instance, since you're giving up a spell slot, which is a fairly precious resource, and anything that you create are like the extracts made by an alchemist with the infusion discovery, which means once you set it down, it no longer becomes inert. It's usable by any non-alchemist character, or in this case, non-druidic character. So you can dispense these amongst your allies, and they'll be able to make ready use of them. The only cost being to your spell slots per day, which, that is still expending a resource on your part, and definitely a valuable resource, but even still, to be able to expand this out to other spells beyond 3rd level, just so readily and capably, and being able to hand them off to allies, does introduce some interesting options and combinations for you. And to really learn more, I would really recommend that you look up the alchemist extracts and how all of that functions, just so that you're a little bit more informed and a little bit better prepared in regards to making all of that work. Assuming your DM lets this be open to you. I don't know. It's kind of iffy because I can see some potential for abuse with this, especially in conjunction with the fact that you're a full spellcasting class with wild shape. That is definitely, it makes things a little bit more interesting. But if I were a DM running this, I would probably allow it because, shoot, I have essentially unlimited resources at my fingertips to challenge the players, and more means than just combat of making encounters much more interesting, and doing so within a scope that makes sense to the story and situation at hand, not just mindlessly screwing over players because I'm DM and I'm on a power trip, but just to tell a better story. So I can see where DMs might not want to allow this, but I would still encourage DMs to do so. It's an interesting option, and it adds just a little bit more variety to the potential of what can be made with druids. One other thing I'll note is that since this is running so heavily on your wisdom score modifier, you're going to be leaning more into being a spellcaster with this particular build. So since you're giving up your animal companion and your different domain selections that you can potentially choose from by selecting this, I would say lean more into being going full spellcaster with this. This way you boost your wisdom score higher and further, and you're able to increase the spell save DCs, increase the number of different concoctions you're able to put together using this herbalism ability, and really just maximize that effectiveness, at least from a mechanical mathematics standpoint. Certainly, leaning into being a full spellcaster is not really going to be a hindrance at all. Full spellcasting classes are just bustedly powerful, especially once you hit mid-levels, which by 7th level, you're definitely going to be absolutely devastating in a lot of encounters with this ability or otherwise. Now, was there anything else that needed to be mentioned? Oh, yes, this had come up a little bit throughout the series of videos for this, but I do think Druid is one of those classes that people are drawn to. Absolutely agree on that particular point. People really seem to like the Druid overall. It's interesting, it's different. People just really kind of and it's a spellcasting class, so people do kind of gravitate into it, but don't really understand or grasp the full scope of the class's abilities, which one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the herbalism concoctions is to kind of help expand the understanding of all that. It was Will Johnson that had brought this up, but a lot of people will go into this class and not understand the full scope of its abilities or understand really how it's supposed to work or function, and then that can kind of get things to be bogged down a bit to help this player along that doesn't really get what they're supposed to be doing and maybe getting left behind. And getting left behind just sucks, feeling like you're lost, you don't know what you're doing. That's kind of awful, especially as everybody else is just progressing and moving forwards and everyone seems like they're having a blast. That's a pretty awful time, and no DM worth their salt wants to see a player struggling like that. And I don't believe many players would like that either, so everybody generally is going to be willing to stop to help. But if you're going to go in whatever class you're playing, I don't care if it's fighter, barbarian, or going into druid or summoner with all their eidolons, or if you're going to any of the psychic classes, read up on what your class is supposed to be doing. Read up on what it's supposed to do, and if you have questions, try to talk to your DM beforehand or other players. Talk to them and ask them, hey, how is this supposed to work? Guides like this, I don't think I'm the only one doing first edition Pathfinder content. I guess I should probably look into that. But, you know, guides like this are meant to be helpful, and there's lots of forums out there. There's lots of forums, there's lots of other places that do guides. Illusory, RPG Bot, they have guides galore all over. And the different forums, I just scroll through and read through. I check out RPG Bot, Illusory. Lots of different people have thoughts and ideas out there, so it can really do a lot to help you figure out what your class is supposed to do and how it's supposed to function, and different ways for you to be able to build it to be more effective. But most of all, definitely talk with your DM first, as your DM is going to give you the layout, the parameters, the details of the setting, which are all going to end up being fairly important to how you build your character. Because if it's going to be a lower magic setting, a setting where there's going to be more emphasis on keeping track of your spell components and all of these different things, and spell components are going to be explicitly consumed in the process of casting different spells, then you are definitely going to want to know that beforehand, so you can understand how to build your character, and understand that in some instances, or many instances maybe, in a low magic campaign, a Wand of Cure Light Wounds is going to be insanely valuable and probably kind of hard to get, so it will be important for you to invest skill ranks into the heal skill in order to help your teammates along. And if your DM will let you, going into the your herbalism variant option there, allowing you to create these different concoctions out of your spells. Now, this means you'll have to be the one administering everything to kind of try to help people in that regards, but you know, I'm starting to get myself lost in the weeds here again. Point is, talk to your DM, find out what the setting's going to be like, what they're allowing, what they're disallowing, because maybe you spend time researching and building up a character into a class, and he goes, oh, no, I'm not allowing these classes, and now you've got to start from scratch, and also probably being a little bit bummed out that you now have to make a whole new character, and you've spent some time getting invested in this first one. That's just awful all the way around. So, point being, talk to your DMs, find out whatever details they're willing to give you, whatever kind of parameters they're willing to set, then go and find out how to do that thing, and try to gain at least more of an understanding of what the class is able to do. And if you're having trouble remembering some of these things, especially when it comes to the array of spells that you're able to bring to bear, you know, get down a couple that you're pretty sure you're going to be using regularly, and you know, get familiar with those, and then have a couple extra on hand and write them down on a scratch sheet of paper. If you can remember just a handful of spells right off the top of your head and what they're supposed to be doing, great. And then you have a couple extra on hand to swap out on an as-needed basis that you can reference on. Instead of having to flip through the book and look up what everything does, this will make things a lot easier. And if you really, really struggle, then have that scratch sheet of paper, fill it out a little bit more thoroughly, and then write down the spell names, and then write down what page you can find them on. That way you can cut down the amount of time you're having to reference the book. Mark down what page your class and all of its abilities are listed on. Or, you know, don't have your phone out the whole time during your game session, but if you bookmark the page that has your class abilities and details there, that can be a quick and easy reference for you to make use of. Just, you know, let your DM and the rest of the party know, hey, I'm paying attention, I'm just looking this up. Also, when it's not your turn, if you have a moment, look things up beforehand. Don't wait until it's your turn to go, oh wait, what should I do? Oh, let me scroll through the book here real quick. And I don't say this to like bash on anybody, but, you know, just if you can look things up before it gets to your turn, that can kind of help cut down that time and smooth things right along and keep you moving with the rest of the group. But, of course, what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Let me know your thoughts either way. Hit those like or dislike buttons, and we'll engage in discussion down below. I don't think I'd missed too terribly much from there. Certainly there was a lot of different build ideas and options there. So many people commenting, which thank you so so damn much. It's massively appreciated. In particular, Gordon McInnes? McInnes? I'm gonna assume Gordon McInnes. If I messed that up, so sorry. But Gordon has commented throughout this series with lots of other options and ideas that are really, really solid or just great all the way around. Certainly, the comment section through these various videos and this channel overall seems to, has been largely more or less very, very positive. So very helpful community, bunch of people down in there, so don't feel afraid to go scrolling down through the comment section. Not as though I have a whole host or library of people commenting so far, but still, there's lots of good information down there. Certainly plenty of things worth considering and looking at, and while I am your resident Loremaster and storyteller extraordinaire, I'd say I'm probably about a B- for rules knowledge overall, C+ on some days, competent enough to keep things running with a good cohesive structure, but I also homebrew a lot of things at this point, and some things just kind of blur and blend together, and I'm an A+ storyteller overall, or, I've had a number of different players tell me I'm one of the best DMs they've had, but that's a case-by-case individual basis as well too. I could probably play for or run a game for some other players and they go, oh my god, that was terrible. It's just a matter of flavor and what people are looking for. God, this is getting weird. I feel awkward now and my imposter syndrome is kicking in, so I'm going to wrap this up. I've been Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, incredibly flustered and feeling so self-conscious now. Thank you all so very much for your time. Go subscribe, and you have yourselves a good night.